Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from the Pistons to the NBA draft and the Motor City Cruise.
And like we've been trying to do a better job saying, but of course, if you are tuning in live, thank you. We appreciate it. Yes, even my guy, Bryce Simon, who's giving us a hard time for starting a little bit late today. But, we did it so that we could be certain of the good news, which we'll get to in a second. But of course, leave the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you're listening on podcast, you can leave a comment. We do follow those, so we like reading them when they come in. And of course, subscribe there. All this stuff, it does help us grow. We really appreciate it. But like LK says, all-star loading. You want to break the fun news, the reason we were maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes late?
Oh man, well, I mean, I don't know if it's like officially official. The Pistons did. We all know what's happening, and the Pistons. I believe it was the Pistons shop sent out like a marketing email that said all-star Cade, essentially all-star certified, shop for Cade Cunningham gear, and then it has a beautiful graphic with Cade and all-star and everything. So seems like they might have leaked the news a little bit early. I think that all the reserves are going to be officially announced on NBA on TNT sometime within this next 20 minutes if they haven't already been announced. So Cade Cunningham, we were wondering going into the season when he was going to be an all-star. Pretty certain he would make it at some point over his career, just weren't sure when it was going to happen. And year 4, just incredible stretch. The Pistons are overachieving. Cade has been playing out of his mind. Most of the time you can nitpick some things here and there, but he's like your franchise guy. And just shout out to Cade. It's so well-deserved, and happy to finally get another Piston back on the All-Star team.
I don't know if it's getting old or anything at this point, but I'm just going to read off this stat line again because, I mean, of course he's an all-star. This is, I just simply saying that was obvious as all get out is almost understating it. He's averaging 25 points, 6.4 rebounds, 9.3 assists on the year over 43 games. I mean, if that isn't all-star numbers, I don't know what is. He's been playing over 36 or right about at 36 minutes a night. His production's gone up really since Jaden Ivey went down, which is just putting more on his plate, but also more focus, right, from the defense. Like, he's an exceptionally deserving all-star. I think if the Pistons were winning somehow even more games, right, they're already overachieving, but if they were winning more games, you're looking at him as a starter at this point. Bryce puts up a good stat. I was looking at this too. 25 points and 9 assists. The only players in the league right now with those numbers, him being Cade, and Nikola Jokic. 25, 6, and 6 is also only him and Jokic, and then Luka Doncic, right? And that's it. Like, this is, I know that we get to watch it every night, right? Every time the Pistons play, for the most part. I think he did miss a couple games during the year, but for the most part, when the Pistons play, you're watching all-star, all-NBA caliber basketball, and maybe we're just getting a little bit used to it, but this is an exceptional season that he's putting together halfway through. Exceptional.
For sure. I think for anyone who has followed this team over the past few years, and I know the great majority of people who aren't Pistons fans or people who are covering the league at large, like, didn't have much reason to watch the Pistons. But for those of us that have been tapped in, like, I feel like we saw that Cade was capable of being that kind of guy. It was almost just a when question, or if the team context would be ever complimentary enough to him to take him to where he needs to be. And I think it's just this season, no one has really expected what the Pistons did, dropped a few games in a row. We'll get into that, but just the mixture of Cade taking that step and just growing as a player, combined with some of these off-season acquisitions with Malik Beasley, and finally addressing like the spacing and shooting and just getting some veterans that are contributing to the team. I think it just was the perfect storm that honestly I couldn't have known what that could have ended up as going into the season, but already it's resulted in an all-star appearance for Cade Cunningham in year 4. I mean, it should be the first of many. Like, the guy is incredible whenever you watch him play basketball, and who knows where he'll be able to take the Pistons. This year, I still don't think is the year where you're truly going to contend or maybe even battle for a playout. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but you have your guy, and that's the hardest part of rebuilding team, and a lot of teams are still looking for and would love to be in the position where you have Cade Cunningham and you're just figuring out how to make everything work around him.
So I want to talk briefly about just, generally what it means and how nice it is to have an all-star again back on the Detroit Pistons. There was a very sad graphic put up during that Pacers game the other night that we'll talk about, but I wanted to read off all of the all-star reserves here. All right. So we've got Jaylen Brown, Pascal Siakam, Darius Garland, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Damian Lillard, Tyler Hero. I'm very happy to see Evan Mobley get in. There Bryce had it too in the chat. So there's our full all-star list.
And so the first timers of that group would be Cade, Mobley, and Hero, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Garland made it last year, didn't he?
I feel like Garland has had one before. I don't remember if it was last year, but yeah, I think of those, it's those 3 as the first timers.
Going 11. So Bryce just said when he did a projection a couple weeks ago, he went 11 for 12, which is pretty dang good, I got to say.
Yeah.
And of course, we got our guy Mateus saying, hey, how are you? We're doing good. Hope you're doing well down in Brazil, as has been noted out in the chat. Let's just briefly talk about that little graphic that I alluded to earlier, because it's sad, but it also, I think, kind of illustrates the moment, I suppose, for the Pistons and for Pistons fans. The only all-stars that have been out of Detroit since the going to work era, which basically ends in 2008, have been Allen Iverson, Andre Drummond, and Blake Griffin. The only double of those is Andre Drummond, who had 2 all-star appearances like 2 or 3 seasons apart. That is barren, to put it bluntly. That's barren. So now Cade's to the list.
Yeah, and he debatably should have been a starter. And also, just Bryce asked me in the chat what time it is in Brazil. I think I get to cheat a little bit because I have some coworkers in Argentina, and I also do listen to the Pistons Pulse, which if I'm sure everyone who's listening is with us live does already, but if you're not, definitely listen to the Pistons Pulse with Bryce, Omari, and Wes. But I believe it is maybe an hour or 2 behind us. I know it's very similar time zone, but again, I cheated just because of some prior knowledge and also listening to you guys figure it out on the Pistons Pulse. But yeah, I mean, I think Cade has played well enough to be a starter. He has the numbers. He has everything. I mean, it's really a numbers game, and the fan vote plays into it. Like, I think Cade will get there eventually. And I was never like, I know there's always the chatter of just players in Detroit not getting their due, like Kirby Joseph with the Lions. There was a bunch of chatter to him not getting into the Pro Bowl and stuff. And yeah, he led the NFL in interceptions. Like, there's definitely a reason to get mad about that. But I feel like for Cade, if I was always certain he was going to make the all-star team when he wasn't announced as a starter, I was like, yeah, he's going to get in by the coaches. Obvious no-brainer. Like, if for some reason that didn't happen, like, I would have been okay if people wanted to riot over it. Like, he's been that good. He's the definition of an all-star. Like you said, he's debatably been one of, if not the best guards in the East at times over the season. And what he's taken this team to be, like, at 500 right now. So not anything incredible by any means, but the step, like they've already won 9 more games than they did the entire last season. And yes, that was a horrible season, franchise low wins, but like that step over this short period of time and the growth that he's taken, and just the sheer amount of times where Cade Cunningham is the best player on the court when you're watching a Pistons game, like he's just the definition of an all-star. So I'm happy. I'm happy we know for sure.
I wish that the whole like big market thing the talking point that is would kind of go away, because look, I really do think that it's changing, if it's not already been changed, with social media and all the accessibility things. You don't need to be in New York to have a lot of fans or have a lot of awareness. Just look at the Eastern Conference All-Stars now, right? So you've got Donovan Mitchell, he's in Cleveland. You got Giannis, he's at Milwaukee. You've got Damian Lillard, also Milwaukee. Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, both in Cleveland. Siakam, Indianapolis. Cade Cunningham, obviously in Detroit. And then Miami is like debatably the big time city, right? Like it's a pretty big market, but it's not quite, New York, Chicago, LA, or anything like that. So, my point is, I think Cade belongs in that category, right? He's an all-star, and he's possibly even going to get on an all NBA ballot here by the end of the year. And it's only up from here. And I just don't think that being in Detroit is going to hurt him at all. Thankfully, it's good. They just need to win games. If you win, you're going to get in.
Yeah, that's all it is. And I feel like that was the holdup that I wasn't
that was
sure
the
about.
argument last year, right?
Yeah, and still, even like this year, before they rattled off some of the hot stretches they were on, like that was going to be what it was. So yeah, I mean, I get it. All the big like talking heads can say whatever they want about Detroit, but just like the player that he is and what he's done this year, and we knew he was going to be on this path, but it was just, again, like, when is it going to happen? It happened a lot sooner than I thought personally, and I'm just happy for Cade and the whole team, really. Like, I'm sure they're celebrating right now,
Sure.
even though it has been a rough and tough week of basketball for him too.
So this is supposed to be more of a trade deadline preview, and we are going to spend the majority of the show talking about that. But let's talk just a little bit about that Pacers game that just happened on Wednesday night. The only thing I really want to say, and I'm just going to get it out of the way, and then I'm going to cede the floor to you, is that was a fun basketball game. All right. It was a bit of a roller coaster. It was a bit of an accordion type game. The Pacers would run out, Pistons would reel them back in, out and back in, and kind of off and back and forth they went throughout the majority of the game. I love how chippy it was. I loved how physical the game was. I loved all the trash talk. And gosh darn it, I know that George Blaha went nuts there for a second, but Tyrese Halliburton is fun, man. He is a good player. He is a wizard with the basketball. You pair that with Cade on the other side doing what he did. That is just a fun basketball game. I hope we get to watch that a lot more over the next 2-3 years.
Yeah. It was a fun game, even though it was frustrating at times for Pistons fans. And I mean, you knew there was going to be emotions going into that one after what I believe it was Jaylen Duren, after the teams played 2 weeks ago. He said, like, we'll see him in a couple weeks. And that game ended in some chatter with Isaiah Stewart talking to Miles Turner about Legos and everything. So you knew like it was going to be a chippy game. It started off that way. It continued on, like James Johnson and Stewart getting those double technicals, and then Stewart just trucking Thomas Bryant or whatever he did. And
Can I just say real quick, when the double tech happened live, I actually had to go back and listen to it because I could not believe James Johnson was still in the league. like they said, James Johnson. No way. That can't be the same guy.
He got a couple minutes at the end of the game too. And I was worried.
I was guessing year 20. It was apparently year 16, but good for James Johnson, man. Sticking around.
Hey, he's their enforcer. So yeah, it's I mean, obviously wish Isaiah Stewart got to stick around in that one, but there were things said, apparently. Who knows what those things are? I just hope that he doesn't get suspended, I felt like it was a clear flagrant 2 on it. Like, I wasn't surprised. I just wish he got to stick around in the game, because that would have been even made it even more fun. But Paul Reed had brought some energy for the minutes that he got without Isaiah Stewart. So just have to hope Stewart doesn't get suspended and everything. And yeah, the only thing, like the actual game wise, I think the Pistons have just found themselves in a couple of games in a row where they have never really controlled or just been in control, even though things got close, like at points in both the loss to Indiana and Cleveland. And it's a tough stretch of the schedule, especially after the Pistons West Coast trip. Like, I don't blame them for what's going on. It's just, you have to hope that this stretch doesn't stick around for a while. Like, maybe Cade's all-star nod brings some more juice. And like, I think the team has played with energy at times. It's just like they've gotten punched in the mouth, it seems, and just weren't really able to control the game. And then the opponent just tries to take Cade out of it and make someone else beat them, which is how this team is going to get played. So just have to hope they turn it around, and can't expect them to win every game. So nothing to panic over. It's just like, hopefully they can go out and find a win and not prolong this short losing streak.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, if you're tuning in live with us right now, be sure to throw in some trade questions, trade talk, thoughts, whatever you guys have. Put them in our live chat. We're going to get to those. We're going to get to that in a second. But and this is actually going to kind of transition nicely into that subject, I think. But can we talk a little bit about Ausar Thompson? I think he's really struggled these past couple of games. And, I know that, against the Pacers, it really was defensively that the team struggled. And, I guess I don't really think that Ausar was exempt from that per se. But I want to focus more on the offensive side of the ball, because I do think this past week and a half, 2 weeks, we've started to see a shift from opposing defenses. And it's not that they've not been trying and figuring out ways to make the spacing thing work offensively. Cade's 3-point numbers have dropped a little bit since Ivy went out, and he's taking more shots, which you'd obviously expect him to do. So, I don't think that the spacing with Ausar and Duren in that starting lineup is having as large of an impact there as I thought. But it does seem to me that what we've consistently seen teams do now is what the Pacers actually did a couple of weeks ago, and kind of got that ball rolling, which was just send a ton of attention to Cade Cunningham and have somebody else on the floor beat you, right? If we're going to lose the game from their perspective, they're going to lose the game by the hand of somebody other than Cade Cunningham. And of course, Cade's an amazing player, as we said, all-star, potentially all-NBA. He's still killing teams. He's still having great nights. Maybe a little bit less efficient than he'd been in the past, but still having great nights. Ausar Thompson just needs to be a threat. If he's going to be the guy that's bringing the ball up the floor when the defense is taking the ball out of Cade's hands and putting a lot of backcourt pressure in, like, he can't just come up and either make the first pass or dribble with his head down to the block, jump stop, and like look around for a little bit. The fact that he just, gosh, it's not his strength. So I feel bad being nitpicky a little bit on this, because this is not what he's been asked to do before, and it is totally new to him. He wasn't even asked to do this kind of stuff at OTE. But if he's going to have the ball in his hands and he's going to be making decisions, he has to make the defense think about him having the ball, and he's just not doing that right now. And I do really think that when you pair that with what all of the lack of spacing is allowing teams to throw at Cade, that, the slow start, for example, against Indiana, expected, made a lot of sense based on how that game was being played. I don't know what the fix is outside of finding outside help, but I think it's a really big problem right now.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, if like if he needs to play in the second unit a little bit more, maybe alongside Sasser and Beasley. And like, I know we're going to talk about the trade deadline, which we're a week away from. And this Simone Fontecchio is probably the player that gets brought up the most in trades outgoing for the Pistons based on their roster. But I wonder, do you just put like Fontecchio in the starting lineup and see what happens for a game or two? I feel like JB hasn't really made changes like that just on the fly, I guess. So I wonder if we'll see Ausar just stick it out there debating on what happens at the trade deadline, who comes in, who goes out. But yeah, I agree with you. Like the defense, although he's still a good defender, you can definitely pick some things apart, especially in the past couple of games. And then if he's just not going to be a threat offensively and not be able to make things happen as well, like you gotta do something, because it just helps those opposing game plans to really target Cade, blitz him, get the ball out of his hands, and make someone else do something or make a shot. Like it just makes that not sustainable, and it lets the other team succeed more. So it's difficult overall. I wonder if Ausar just needs to play in different lineups a little bit more, or what it is. But yeah, it's definitely been tricky over the past few games specifically.
I think to me that it's bringing up, or bringing at least to the forefront, a problem that the Pistons have that's not just simply another ball handler. And I've seen this a lot talked about like on Twitter or just in talking to some friends. But like, so Brad B says in the comments, they can't beat the press, which, by the way, when the Pacers snapped that surprise trap in the backcourt on Cade, and just brutal. Nobody came back to the ball. Oh, that was so brutal. But anyway, so he says we can't beat the press, and they need another ball handler really badly. I kind of disagree that they need another ball handler. I think they've got plenty of guys that can just dribble the ball up past half court and make the first pass to start the offense. Because if you're not going to be asking Ausar Thompson to be telling people where to go, things like that, which is generally Cade's job or the job of a quote unquote point guard, right? When they sit, which would be Marcus Sasser when Cade's on the bench, then like they've got plenty of guys. It doesn't have to just be Ausar. It could be Tim Hardaway Jr. He's done it before. We've seen Malik Beasley do it. Tobias Harris has done it. Shoot, like Jaylen Duren's brought the ball up the floor, even though I don't like it. Like he can dribble and make a pass or a DHO. To me, the problem is that the Pistons have exactly one guy on the roster, maybe one and a half, depending on how hot Sasser is on a given night, that like when they possess the ball, the defense, and when they possess the ball and they're dribbling, I should say, so when they're probing or trying to do things on an active dribble, that the defense really has to pay attention to, right? Like Fontecchio has me on the edge of my seat, and not in a good way when he puts the ball on the floor. I wish he would just stop. Tim Hardaway Jr. every now and then can whip out a nice drive, but you wouldn't want him ISOing at the top of the key and trying to make something happen. That's the same with Ausar. Ron Holland every now and then, like maybe make something happen, but he's still too raw and too young to really rely on that consistently. They just don't have a guy outside of giving Tobias Harris the ball in the post that like draws attention outside of Cade Cunningham. So to me, like I'd pass on Lonzo Ball right now, unless there's another move being made that brings in somebody that can actually be a threat. I'd pass on Lonzo Ball. I wouldn't really want Bruce Brown, which is someone that our guy there in the chat, Bryce, has brought up a couple of times as a good fit. And I agree, good fit. I'd love both of those players if Jaden Ivey was healthy, or if they had another ball handler who could like really take pressure off Cade in this way, which is not simply, just bring the ball up the floor, but bring the ball up the floor and make the defense look at you and address you and then get the offense going. They don't have that. That's the guy that I want. Yes. So YouTube user says CJ McCollum. Also, Bryce has brought that name up a lot to me when we're just chatting. I think CJ McCollum would be a perfect answer to this type of question if he's available, but not Lonzo Ball.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you. I wonder if there's a player that could be like a mixture of both, like help you out. But I think just the loss of Jaden Ivey is really sticking out over the past few games, and yeah, it stinks. And I, like you brought up Ron Holland, like I think you have to hope that he grows into that guy who you can trust with the ball in his hand, get to the rim, and his shots looking a little bit better and make things happen and take some of that pressure away from Cade. But like you said, he's not ready yet. And although he's getting those reps, and I think he should consistently get little by little, like more and more responsibility on him. I just don't think you're going to be there this season. And with how this team is overachieved, like you need some answers for these game plans that are getting thrown at you, honestly. And yeah, I don't think the answer is on the roster right now. So yeah, CJ McCollum's an interesting name. It's just about how do you get there? Like you definitely have to part with THJ or like could you get to it without Tim Hardaway Jr. and Tobias?
Maybe. So
I'm
what?
sure
Tim
there's a
Hardaway
way.
Jr. is close to 15, and then Tech's at what is Tech at?
He's like
8.
8, yeah.
So that gets you
So
up
with the cap
23.
space, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, Bryce doesn't think so either. I don't think you can get there. I think you
It's
get
just
pretty
hard.
close,
Like,
but it's not. It's not enough.
okay, Bryce says you don't need Harris, and you can do it with Tim Hardaway
Oh,
Jr. and Fontecchio. So
oh, right, because
the
they got extra cap
the
space that
cap
they could
space,
trade
yeah.
into. Yes, right. Okay, so yeah, THJ and Tech.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just I wonder like the big contracts I feel like are a little because Tim Hardaway Jr. has been useful at times. Like
Yeah,
I'm sure you
and a good
don't.
locker room guy.
Yeah, I'm sure Trajan would be okay, like including him in a deal, but uh, I feel like I don't know. I just be interested to see like how the depth shakes out when you make a move like this. Like I wonder if there's just some interesting young guy you can take a flyer on more as like a depth piece who can help you off the bench as well. So I'll be interested to see like what they do at the deadline. I feel like some move has to happen. I'm not holding my breath for CJ McCollum to get traded to Detroit, but I think like just where the roster stands right now with that, like just get some defensive attention away from Cade. Like I think the answer to that problem is not on the team right now, or just wait for Jaden Ivey to come back.
So Bryce asked a good question. Is Bruce Brown the middle ground, right? So between a guy like CJ McCollum, who really would garner that level of attention that we've been talking about from the defense, and then a guy like Lonzo Ball, who just frankly is just a passer, just a pick and roll operator type guy. To me, I say no. I'm curious to know what you would think. I don't. Bruce Brown is a player I really like and I would actually love on the Pistons. Like I said, if you could, wave a magic wand and heal Jaden Ivey's shin, then I think that the Bruce Brown would be the absolute perfect addition for the roster. But he's just not, to my knowledge, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I am, he's just not a guy that can get any sort of advantage unless he's got a screen set for him or is otherwise put in a good position by someone else. And that's really where I'm kind of at. Like, whoever they get to ideally solve this problem, if they get anybody to solve this problem, they need to be able to turn the corner on their own and create something. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be a bucket, but they have to be a threat to do that. And I just don't think that that's Bruce Brown.
Yeah, I think he could be a little bit of a middle ground, like Bryce is saying. Like, I don't think he's a complete solve to your problem, but might just be able to garner attention maybe in the way Tobias does in the post in different ways. And just mix things up a little bit in a way that this team doesn't really have right now. I think the thing with Bruce Brown is I'm sure it's interesting because he's an expiring deal, and it's like, how badly do the Pistons want immediate help? Like, if I'm Toronto, I'm asking for my second round pick back, which is it could be very high at the start of the second round. Like, it's dropped a little bit. It's at 36 overall right now, but like, I'd want that asset back. And if I'm the Pistons, and I'm my first round pick that I owe is finally going to convey this year, I'm not rushing to give up that second rounder for immediate help. So I think it might just be tough to find a deal. But yeah, like YouTube users says, they have all this cap space. You have to find a way to use it. And hopefully there's a way to like just make some magic work and keep your flexibility, but also bring in this roster like immediate help by taking on some player that maybe is out of the rotation or help someone get under the second apron, whatever it might be.
Yeah, so 37 cycles says, based on what both of you are talking about, I think Kobe White would be an interesting fit. That's something that Laz Jackson brought up on the Pistons Pulse. And of course, if you haven't listened to that, again, please do. That was a
great
fantastic episode. But yeah, Kobe White, I loved that idea. I think that would be a perfect fit for exactly what I'm talking about. And you know what else? Another name, I don't even know if he'd really be available, but Cam Thomas would address this rather well, I have to say. He's not a passer by any means, but when he's got the ball, if he's dribbling it up, someone's got to go step up. Otherwise, he's putting up a three because he's Cam Thomas. That would be a name I would like. I'd have some interest in. I know that maybe there's a little bit of the Nets might be open. I don't know if the Pistons have anything the Nets would really want for him. Is he up on contract extension talks yet?
Because
that might be the only angle,
and I do not believe he got an extension. So
I didn't think so either.
He'll be a restricted free agent in 25, 26. So
he's already what, 23, 24 years old?
23. Yeah.
So maybe that's the angle for Brooklyn. They just don't want to pay him. They're completely resetting their rebuild. So he's about to be aging out of that. You need to give them some sort of draft capital, though, I would imagine. Maybe not first round pick, but maybe young player plus seconds. Maybe Marcus Sasser's interesting to them there as more of a backup guy. But yeah, Cam Thomas would be a name I'd be very, very interested in.
Yeah, and I love the Kobe White idea too. And Bryce brings up Kobe White makes just under 13 million, which is conveniently right under the amount of leftover cap space that the Pistons have. And I apologize. He's making 12 million this year and just under 13 next year. So that's like a very affordable deal. And he is a great player, but like it's wild because I feel like the Bulls don't, like, they should have made so many moves a long time ago, and who knows what they're doing.
And none of those moves should involve Kobe White.
Yeah, but like maybe this is finally when they're like, let's just reset, relinquish as much like financial commitment as we have. And yeah, send me back like Marcus Sasser, the expiring deal, and a pick or whatever it might be. I mean, honestly, if I'm Chicago, I'm not super inclined to trade Kobe White, but like something has got to give at some point, and I think he is a good name that like fills the need that we're talking about here. The only thing with Cam Thomas that I was going to say is I mean, will he play all his time next to Cade? And two, if he does, will he take too many touches and shots away from Cade?
No, he wouldn't. Well, he would certainly play almost all of his minutes next to Cade when Jaden Ivey is still injured. But I mean, so Cade was averaging about close to 20 shots a night, and now he's up over that since Ivy went down. Ivy was at 14, I think. So Thomas probably does a little bit more, but yeah, that's where the majority would come from. I think anyway. I could be very wrong. Mega Hustle says Anthony Simons. That's another really good name, but I'm also with Bryce. I think Portland would probably want actual assets for him, not just kind of salary dump stuff. Let's get to this one. This was interesting. This guy, Thugway Joe, says, would Okongwu or Hunter from Atlanta be possible? He also asked about Nikola Vucevic out of Chicago again, but let's focus on those first two first. What do you think?
I don't think Okongwu would, because he's just kind of slid into that starter role. And I saw like a report that the Hawks were potentially in on Nurkic, so maybe like backup. But I think this is finally when Okongwu is getting the runway in Atlanta. They gave him money. Like, I think they're going to keep Okongwu. I think they definitely be willing to give up DeAndre Hunter, especially after the season-ending injury to Jalen Johnson. The thing about DeAndre Hunter, though, is like he's 21 this year, 23 next year, and 25 the year after that. Like, I'm not sure he's worth that. Like, I think he would help immediately, but I'm not sure I'd want to commit to him over the next 2 years. Like, with the cap going up, maybe it's fine and a reasonable deal, but especially when Cade's extension is going to kick in, you got to think about what you're doing with Ivy, what the future is for Duren, and then Ausar and Holland after that. Like, I don't know necessarily. And I think Vucevic, again, similar to the Kobe White stuff, like, he should be available. And if I were Chicago, I would like to get off him. I think he solves a ton of problems for the Pistons, and playing him next to Cade would be awesome, even though you lose a bit of your lob threat there. But he makes 20 this year, 21 next year. I think that's a perfect way to buy some time while you figure out what to do at your center position.
Yeah, I'm with you on Vucevic. I think that offensively, at least, he'd be a really good answer for what the Pistons need at the moment. But man, I'm going to have to really disagree with you on DeAndre Hunter. That contract. So one, he's like 27 right now, right? Something like that.
Let me go back to it.
Years old.
He's 27.
Yeah. Okay. So he's averaging 19 points, almost 4 rebounds, and an assist and a half, shooting almost 40% from three on the year. And he's got a lot of good history as a good shooter, and 46% from the floor. And he's doing it off the bench. He's only started 2 games this year. Yeah. So Bryce is right. He says that DeAndre Hunter's been my guy for like 3 years. It's true, but he took a leap this year. The only downside with him is health. Which I'll readily admit that's a downside. But if you're getting, almost 20 points a night on 40% from three off the bench on like $21 million in salary, oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be phenomenal. I think, for the record, he starts in Detroit too. So, I mean, I'm with a YouTube user. So he mentioned, where did it go? Yeah, there it is. He says that he would imagine Atlanta would want a first-round pick for DeAndre Hunter, at least. I would agree with that. If I were them, I don't know why I'd want to get rid of him, even with that injury to Jalen Johnson. He's fairly cheap for the production that you're getting. He's still pretty young, and he's a good defender on top of all of this. Like, I would be floored if he was gettable. I'd be over the moon, though, if the Pistons could.
Yeah. I guess I just wonder, like, seeing those years on his contract, like, if that is something like the team would be open to. Like, yeah, you're definitely right. He's been great this year. I guess that was like my hang up with it as well. I think he'd certainly like help this team out for sure. And yeah, like YouTube user mentions, Atlanta acquired Dyson Daniels, who has been unreal as well this year. So their wing room.
I bet they would pay good money to get off of Bogdan Bogdanovic right now. I do not know what's going on with that guy, but the 3-point percentage went in the tank.
Yeah. So their wing room is deep. So maybe that's why they would consider moving on from Hunter. But yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I'd give up a first round pick for him either.
Yeah, even me, I don't think that I'd give up a first round pick for my guy, DeAndre Hunter. I don't think I'd give up a first round pick.
You've seen how hard those picks are to
my goodness,
acquire.
yeah.
So like,
right?
Yeah,
why give them up? Exactly. We got an interesting question here. This is from @Dojumars on Twitter. Mentioned a piece by John Hollinger. I think this was at The Athletic, correct? Correct me if I was wrong. Okay, yes, at The Athletic, which was a pretty good article, but mentions potentially sending out Simone Fontecchio and getting back Harrison Barnes plus some picks. I couldn't find exactly what the picks were, but the general structure and idea of the trade. All right. This was a De'Aaron Fox trade going to San Antonio. Sacramento was just kind of getting picks and stuff, right? For the purposes of this discussion, we don't really need to talk about that. But Detroit would be sending out Fontecchio and then getting back Harrison Barnes. What would you think about something along those lines?
Yeah, I'd like to know what the picks are, because I think you're definitely doing the Spurs a solid here. And I know that some picks have to be sent Sacramento's way to get off of Fox as well. But I think this is a very low risk and like low cost way for the Pistons to use their cap space and acquire some assets, is facilitating a deal just like this. The thing with Barnes is like he's under contract through next season, and what's the production level going to be like? I think he can still help the team out in the short term, but like he's not a guy that's going to be around here for a ton of time. But he's shooting just under 42% from three this year on just under 4 attempts per game. So he's he could help the team out. Like I think he'd be better than Fontecchio has been this season. So I like the deal. But I also wouldn't hate it if they used Fontecchio, the cap space, in another way to acquire maybe a younger and even better player. But depending what the picks are, like I think the picks might be a little bit sweeter in this deal, which is why I might be more interested in it. But again, like who knows what would happen here, because picks would have to fly all over the place over to Sacramento for them to get off Fox.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think even with Barnes more or less being an upgrade over Fontecchio, like if the Pistons are moving on from Simone, I would rather allow that wing room to stay open so that Ron Holland can eat into those minutes at this point. I know that we want the Pistons to improve the roster and ideally make the playoffs, right? Whether that is just by default or through winning some play-in games. So like I get that, but Ron Holland's development is still really important. So I would still personally, if you're going to move on from Fontecchio, I'd rather be getting a big or a guard back just so we clear minutes for Ron Holland. The thing as well with Harrison Barnes is we've got already a better version of Harrison Barnes at home. You know, this is like the bad version of, you know, what's a bad fast food restaurant where like the at home food is definitely better.
I hope I don't get like, I'm trying to say something where I won't get killed for it. I haven't had like, I heard their fries are really good, but like Carl's Jr. I haven't even had it, but I've not. There was one right by my old house, and I've driven past it so many times. I've never went.
Yeah. All right. See, I like it. All right. Carl's Jr. I was going to say Taco Bell. So I think we're in like the same.
Taco Bell is so good. Come on.
Oh, get out of here. No. Oh, we're not doing this.
I know Bryce is a Taco Bell guy too. Yeah, we'll get it.
I'm not having this conversation right now. But all right. Carl's Jr. then. Carl's Jr. This is like when you're a kid and you're asking your mom for Carl's Jr. and you've got homemade hamburgers at home, because Harrison Barnes is averaging almost 12 points a night, 4 rebounds and 2 assists. And Tobias Harris is averaging 13 points, 6 rebounds and 2.5 assists. Like if there wasn't already a Tobias Harris on the Pistons roster, I would be more open to just like bringing in Harrison Barnes and plugging him in as a 4, right? But they've got better Harrison Barnes at home, and you're not getting a first round pick for this. I'd be out. Yeah, Barnes is a better shooter from 3. So Bryce calls that out. He's over 40% from 3, and Harris is in the low to mid 30s. But even so.
Yeah, and I think the issue is to acquire De'Aaron Fox. Like, I'm pretty sure San Antonio has to send Harrison Barnes somewhere. So it's kind of just like the Pistons could be that somewhere. I mean, he makes right around what Keldon Johnson makes. Like, I wonder if that.
I'd rather have him.
I mean, yeah, me too. But again, I think either way, like San Antonio has to send Barnes somewhere, and like, hey, San Antonio is probably going to have to attach some picks to whatever team is taking him. So I guess it just depends like what those picks are and if it's something that Trajan is looking for.
What did LeBron say when he was announced that he signed with the Miami Heat? What was it? It was like not one, not 2,
not 3.
Yeah, that's how many picks I'd need to do that.
That's a great analogy for some GM needs to use that on trade calls.
I bet it has. I bet it's already been used. Okay, we got an interesting question here. This was again Thugway Joe talking about a Jaylen Duren extension. So curious if you agree with this. He says, certainly Jaylen Duren has shown enough to be comfortable not extending him at this point. Correct? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with that. I think you need time, but I just think the most likely thing is Jaylen Duren and the Pistons are not going to agree on an extension. They're going to go into the whole restricted free agency process. It'll be interesting to see if he gets an offer sheet if that happens, but also if that's the route the Pistons want to go, like maybe they trade him. Maybe that's a surprise we see at the deadline. I mean, if you trade Duren, I don't like Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed would be fine, I guess, to get you by, but I think the team also wants to have Duren around, maybe to give him some more time to play pick and roll with Cade, be that lob threat. But yeah, I do not think what we've seen from Duren will result in an extension. I'm pretty comfortable with saying that right now. So it'll just be interesting to see how the team wants to handle it, because I think Jaylen Duren would probably want a decent amount of money that the Pistons aren't willing to commit for the long term right now.
Yeah, I think there are 2 barriers for me. One of them is that Isaiah Stewart's already on the roster. And then the other one is exactly what you just said. Are they able to find a price that Duren would accept on an extension? Because from my perspective, I think we have learned this season that the Pistons have 2 at least above average backup centers on this roster, Isaiah Stewart and Jaylen Duren. I think I would be very comfortable giving Jaylen Duren a similar contract to what Isaiah Stewart got last or 2 off seasons ago, right? Like, I know that I've been hard on Jaylen Duren on this show, but it's just because he's a starter, and the projection on him always is, can he be a starter in the NBA? I would be more than happy with his production off the bench. I think he'd be a very, very good, actually, backup big man. So then the question is, you've already got a very, very good backup big in Isaiah Stewart. So which would you rather have? And if the answer is Jaylen Duren, then is he willing to accept $15 or $16 million to come off the bench when he's been starting almost his entire career to date? So yeah, I think that at this point, there's just not an extension going to be coming down the pipe. And my guess would be maybe some rumblings of a trade over the off season. I wouldn't expect it this deadline, but hey, like you said, that I think we've said before that like that would be the one big surprise that seems plausible. I stand by that. So if there's a surprise, maybe that's what it is. But my guess would be the off season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'd guess like we wouldn't see a Duren trade at the deadline. Like I think the Pistons want to give it more time, and just what I guess I'm not sure about is, say they do reach an extension with Duren that is similar to the Isaiah Stewart contract. Like, what does that mean for Isaiah Stewart? Do you just have
One of them's got to go. Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of like, and I mentioned this, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before on the show, like Isaiah Stewart is kind of like untouchable for me in the trade market. I just think yes, he gets a little hot-headed at times, and he needs to keep his emotions in check sometimes and make sure he's able to stay on the basketball court 100%. But he has been a phenomenal defender, rim protector, and just really like one of the main like heart and soul pieces on this team. Like I don't see how you trade that guy. So it's like if you're negotiating with a similar contract with Duren for a similar role, like it has to be one or the other to me. And it's like Isaiah Stewart isn't the odd man out in that scenario to me right now. Like things can change, and Duren could play his way into an extension maybe, but that's just the way I see it playing out right now.
All right, let's do these two because they were fun. And on the Cade All-Star note, this just cracked me up. YouTube user said, "Are you concerned about Cade Cunningham's back?" Which I had. So the rest of this question is a joke. But when I first read that, I immediately thought, "Oh, is this hearkening back to when I think it was the Charlotte Hornets game where right before overtime he like landed on his back and had to miss overtime and miss the next game?" Like there was a Cade back injury early on in this season, and so I thought that that's what this was going to be about. But he continues and says, "I'm worried about him carrying the entire offensive load on his back. He could slip a disc carrying this team, and you know what? You're right. I'm concerned. I think that he's at severe injury risk." I'm with you, YouTube user.
Yeah, agree. Very valid concern here.
And then just kind of a fun one here. Would you consider sitting Cade Cunningham the last game before the All-Star break, which is the second night of a back-to-back against the Chicago Bulls, because you don't want him to wear down and he's going to be busy over that break?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, it's the All-Star game. I want Cade to do well. How fun would it be to see him come home with the All-Star MVP after he won like the Rising Stars MVP? I don't think that'll happen. I don't think his game is really tailored to the All-Star game. But hey, Cade can take over. There is a world, but I think every game this team is playing is like super important. And yeah, I just don't think it's worth it. Although it is awesome, and I want to see him do well in the All-Star game. Like we need him playing in the Pistons uniform mainly.
I'm 100% in agreement with you. I think that in the future, when the Pistons are right around this point of the year and they've already won more than 30 games, I think that's when we can start having that
when they have 4
on
All-Stars again.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Wow, that's a world I want to live in again. Okay, going back to the Jaylen Duren conversation, YouTube user asks about Day'Ron Sharpe, who will be a free agent this offseason. Would you consider him an upgrade over Jaylen Duren? How much would you pay him? What do you think?
I mean, he hasn't really, like, he would be a good option. I just don't know. Like, say I'm going with Sharpe over Duren. Like, do you start Stewart or Sharpe? And yeah, Bryce brings up that Sharpe is a restricted free agent. So if the Pistons offer sheet him, like the Nets could match. So I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle on this one. Like, I feel like if you give Sharpe an offer sheet, it's kind of like taking a swing. And I don't know how hungry I am for a risk like that. So I don't know. Like, I guess, and not to like harp on Jaylen Duren, like I think the starting center of the future is not on the team right now, but I don't think it's Day'Ron Sharpe necessarily. But he could be a good option if you need like a backup big. And I think he's kind of like Paul Reed, overqualified to be a third big. So I'm not sure what you do there.
Yeah, I think I would not say that Day'Ron Sharpe is an upgrade. I very much agree. I'll just read off the comment. Kind of took the words out of my mouth. Bryce said that he isn't sure that Sharpe is an upgrade over Duren, but you could get similar production if he got the minutes, and it would come at a much cheaper price than what Duren would want on a new contract. That's where I'm at, and that's kind of why I just don't think that I would do it. Like Day'Ron Sharpe and Jaylen Duren, I put together a list of players that were averaging 15 points per 100 possessions, 15 rebounds per 100 possessions, and were bigs and also played more than 10 games, just to kind of filter out the bottom of that list. Day'Ron Sharpe was on it. Jaylen Duren was on it. There were a lot of guys on it that are on mid-level exemption, which is there's some conversation in the chat about that. Some on league minimum. I mean, you've got illustrious names like Andre Drummond on there as well. That's just kind of the range of production that you're getting out of Jaylen Duren right now. I do think that you could get that for a very cheap price if you wanted to do it. But kind of like what we were talking about with the Isaiah Stewart problem of a Jaylen Duren extension, you already have Isaiah Stewart. So I would rather sign or trade for a player that would be an upgrade rather than the same production but at a cheaper cost. Like same production, cheaper cost is nice, but
do you
like
need
you said,
it?
that'd just be a third big at that point.
Yeah, and it's just I'm totally with you. Just if you didn't have Isaiah Stewart at the price you had him, I would say yes. Like it's kind of like the Barlow talk we had in the off season as well. So yeah, I think it's just similar. Like you would be signing him potentially to be your third big just because of the roster, and like I don't think Sharpe would want to do that either. So.
Yeah. So YouTube user asks if Sharpe is a better defender than Duren is, and I just want to pull up the per 100 real quick for blocks. So yeah, he's averaging almost he'd be averaging close to an additional stock per 100 possessions, which I that's not the end all be all of good defender. I only bring that up to say I do think that he is a better defender. I don't think that Sharpe that is a fantastic defender by any means, but I do think that he is better. Bryce brought up an interesting mock trade here, or theoretical mock trade. So asking, would you trade Malik Beasley for a pick that would likely to be in the 10 to 20 range of the draft? You could pick the year, could be 25, 26, or 27, under the assumption that there is a 50-50 shot that you actually were able to re-sign Malik Beasley in the offseason.
Man, that's a tough question. My gut answer is no. Like, I think I'd take that 50-50 chance to re-sign him just because how big he's been for this team. And it's also like, the only reason I'd want the pick is if I wanted to use it in another deal. I think like I just don't know if middle first round guy, like if you want to take a chance on that player working out and you don't know how long it'll take, like I think maybe with that pick you draft an older guy who's ready to play a role for you right now. So I think no, just because Malik Beasley has been huge for this team, and even if I'm not sure I'm going to re-sign him, I'll take those odds over just dealing him right now. But again, if like I could also understand it if there was a bigger move on the table to take that first round pick and use it for something else. But man, I do not want to trade Malik Beasley unless I have to, like, unless you know that he's going to go elsewhere in the offseason.
I'm going to drop some gambling advice for everybody. This is just, look, by trade, I am an economist, so I get to think about
You're going to take the sure thing here, huh?
Well, yeah, but for a very specific reason. So you scale your risk tolerance based on how willing you are to accept the downside, right? So the downside risk really matters what that downside actually is. If it's a 50-50 shot, for example, the downside risk is very, very small. It's not actually conceptually 50-50, okay? And you can go all the way up with that, right? You could have a 75 no, 25 yes, but if the downside is a very small risk, you may still want to take that bet if you think, but it goes both ways. So losing Malik Beasley is not a for nothing, right? Losing Malik Beasley, having passed on a deal that could have gotten me a first round pick, right? That is not a world I am willing to live in. So if my choices are take the first round pick for Malik Beasley and just avoid the coin toss where tails is an outcome I am really, really upset about and heads is an outcome I'm really, really happy with, give me the pick, especially in the 10 to 20 range. If I had my choice, it would be this upcoming draft because I don't think the Pistons will actually have a first round pick in this draft. So you would convey that pick, which is great for your future flexibility. And then you would still get to make a first round pick, possibly if it's on the high end of that 10 to 20 range, possibly even higher than what the Pistons' actual pick would have been anyway. And then you don't have Malik Beasley, which would be a bummer. But yeah, I'd be doing that deal if it's 50-50. If it's like 75 yes, 25 no, I might be more comfortable passing on the trade and hoping that I can re-sign him.
Fair.
I don't want to lose him either, but look, that's
Yeah.
just risk tolerance right there.
Yeah, that's fair. It's kind of like the whole three doors dilemma if you get the opportunity to change your change your option there. But yeah, it's that's a really good question. I think I guess I'd be more comfortable gambling with that one.
Well, so I am not a gambler, so that
Me
is
neither,
absolutely
for the
possible.
record.
All right, let's finish out with these, unless maybe we get another couple in the comments. But this is from Rames, says, will the team be able to sustain playing like a top 10 defense for the rest of the year? Sorry, I hit mute too soon. Rookie mistake. My bad.
No, honestly, I think they don't need to be top 10. And I just think like we don't know how this roster is going to change after the trade deadline. Like we don't know what Ausar Thompson's defensive play is going to be like. And I think the Pistons have got a lot of solid defensive production from players where you weren't necessarily like thinking they would give you much on that end of the floor. Like Cade's been a better defender. Like Malik Beasley has given you stuff at times. And like Ron Hollins looked like a better defender than you thought he was going to come in his rookie season. So I guess I just roster wise, like I don't see this roster as being able to sustain a top 10 defensive mark down the stretch. But I don't think they're necessarily built that way. I think what Isaiah Stewart has given you and how he is as a rim protector has been so big and invaluable to this team. So it could happen, but if I had to pick one or the other, I would guess no, strictly just because of who's on the roster. But the effort will always be there, which makes it possible.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that the effort's pretty well ingrained. Bickerstaff and the other team leaders have done a really good job with that, I think. Look, last I looked, they were, I think, 17th in defensive rating on the season. That could have changed after that Pacers game. I'm not quite sure, but something that I keep coming back to, and this is applicable when we're having these kind of trade theoretical conversations, is just that the fact that this team is overachieving, right? And that everybody is in agreement that, wow, it's great. Look how much they're overachieving right now. That also implies that this roster is not actually close to the level of production they're getting out of it at the moment. All right, I think as kind of maybe that's harsh, maybe not, but I suspect most of us would agree with that. They are punching above their weight right now, and that's not a bad thing. That's obviously a really really good thing, and they're doing that because they have an all-star and a guy that is in Cade Cunningham. That's probably, I'm going to say probably now, is just going to make All NBA third team at this point. Like, he's having a heck of a year. So yeah, they're punching above their weight. But because they're punching above their weight, that means that they don't quite have the talent to even sustain where they're at in terms of where we should be expecting it, right? Like, a reasonable expectation is a little bit of a fall down the back stretch. I don't think that's what we're going to see, but somebody who's not a Detroit Pistons fan might look at the input, might look at the roster, where the Pistons have been, where they're at in net rating, and say, they might fade a little bit down the stretch. So point is, as it applies to the defense, and the defense is, they've been holding teams to lower point totals, but I don't necessarily think they've been playing well every night, which is kind of a weird thing that's happening right now. I don't think that they're going to maintain this down the stretch. I think that we should be really happy if they keep near the middle of the pack like they've been up to this point, and that's where my hope is.
Yeah, and just for the record, over the month of January, the Pistons have had a 110 defensive rating, which is fourth in the NBA on the season. They're 16th. Their defensive rating is 113.1, which puts them like 1.3 points outside of the top 10. So even though they're 16th, it's fairly close. So it could happen. I just think this like hot stretch, even after they've dropped a few games in a row, has really helped out with those. And how would it not, obviously? But yeah, I wouldn't expect them to like keep up that pace for the rest of the year.
All right, let's close out with this one. Fun question. So let's take the extra minutes here and just get it done. YouTube user citing a question from Bryce Simon on his Motor City Hoops Substack, which if you guys haven't subscribed to that, it's free. He just posts his game notes. It is a fantastic resource.
And our guy Harry
read it all
is
the
posting
time.
some like video
content.
Order
right?
the Blazing Horse.
Stuff.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, so his Substack, Motor City Hoops Substack, go subscribe to that. But ask this question: is Tobias Harris living up to your expectations from when he was signed?
Yeah, I think the easy short answer is no. But I think you have to like contextualize it a little bit. Like, when he was signed, the common reaction was, why is he getting that much money? And I mean, I thought the reason was the Pistons had to use the cap space. Don't take contract value. Okay. So removing that.
You just shut us down, Blake.
Yeah.
that was a Bryce comment for all our audio listeners.
Yeah, I still think like the sentiment still stands. Like, he's been okay. He's been underwhelming at times, but he's also been like a positive at times, and I think he's been good for the locker room as well. I think you just want him to shoot a little bit better from three, defend a little bit better, and I mean, his numbers aren't gonna wow you and pop off the page at you, and he could go cold for some stretches, and I think it's just some nights he's really off, and some nights you're getting what you expected out of him. So I think it's been a roller coaster, which it has been at times, and like that after 14 years in the league, I think you have to expect that to a degree. So you just have to hope like the consistency can be there a little bit more, and you can limit some of those I guess invisible performances, but that might just be the way of the player he is right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think on like just how underwhelmed or whelmed I am. Like, I'm leaning towards exceptionally whelmed, if that makes sense, for what we're getting right now out of Tobias Harris. Look, so as compared to 2 years ago, because last year I kind of thought was like a resurgent blip. It seemed unusual. 2 years ago, he was at about 15.6 6 rebounds and call it 2.5 assists. Okay. He shot, excuse me. There we go. He shot 50% from the floor, like 39% from three. So super, super efficient. This year, he's at like 13 points, 6 rebounds, and 2.5 assists again, but his percentages are down. Okay. So he's shooting about 34% from three and 44% from the floor. His numbers have been a little bit better since Jaden Ivey went down. I don't have those in front of me right now, but I do know that they ticked up just a little bit. I agree with YouTube users. So he says that Tobias Harris should be more efficient. I was expecting him to be more efficient than this. I think that maybe that is, the field goal percentage dropping like it has. That may actually be an age thing. So that would be something to monitor, especially going into next year. But the thing is that even with it being not quite the production I was expecting, it's close. It is close. Like, he's in the ballpark. It's not like he was averaging 15 points a night and now he's averaging 8, right? He's averaging about 13. So he's in the ballpark. He's only 4 percentage points less from the floor. Only 5, I think 4 or 5 percentage points worse from three from that season, right? Like, he's in the range. And I think that you do have to think to consider what he's done for the locker room, right? What he's done for, for leadership purposes, how he's impacted the young core, what he's been able to do as a little bit of a coach on the floor and an additional voice for JB Bickerstaff. All that stuff has value, even though it's not on court production necessarily. So I don't know. I think with putting all of that stuff together, and maybe it's a little bit of rose colored tint because of the Pistons winning a lot of games and generally exceeding expectations that we've had on the year. But like, I just feel very whelmed. There are times I wish that we got more out of him. There are times I'm extremely thankful that he's on the team. And yeah, like, it's Tobias Harris. That's just kind of what it feels like. It's Tobias Harris.
It's all part of the Tobias Harris experience. I have a friend who's a Sixers fan. I think this is that's something he said after the signing, and we all know Tobias Harris from his first stint in Detroit, but that was the sentiment for his years in Philly as well. So I think it might just be who he is right now. And I think the team as a whole, like, there are some players, like, you can count on Malik Beasley to make threes, but there have been some nights where he's off from three. The same thing with Tim Hardaway, to like a lesser degree. You're looking for things a little bit more. So I just think just the fact that they have more options that could catch fire definitely benefits the group overall, even though it stinks when some guys are invisible at times.
You know what might be, and we can close on this. You know what might be the way to describe the feelings of Tobias Harris is that most nights Tobias Harris will leave you wanting more, but he'll also leave you very thankful that he's not producing less. Like you're happy that you're getting what you got out of him, and what you got is pretty good. Do you wish it was a little more? Absolutely. And that's just the Tobias Harris experience to me.
You got to print Tobias Harris experience T-shirts. I think those will sell. Those will sell.
I like it. I'll let you trademark it.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Well, hey, we can't close on anything other than congratulations to Cade Cunningham for his first All-Star appearance, and congrats to Pistons fans.
Misspeaking is going around right now, Blake. You and me both. You think this is our first show?
Hey man, it's late on a Thursday. The Pistons got their first All-Star since Blake Griffin. It's all a way of the road. And shout out to everyone for joining live. Reminder to subscribe to the DBB YouTube channel if you haven't already. And reminder, you can call our phone line to ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. Shout out to you guys for the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.